The afternoon sun filtered through the cafe windows in soft golden streams, the kind of light that makes everything feel a little gentler, a little more forgiving. Michael Barrett sat alone at a corner table, his hands wrapped around a cup of Earl Grey that had gone lukewarm. He didn't mind. These days he'd learned to find comfort in small rituals, even imperfect ones. He was 53 years old, with silver threading through his dark hair and the kind of face that carried both kindness and weariness in equal measure. His daughter Emily was away at college now, and the house felt too quiet most evenings, so he'd taken to spending Sunday afternoons at Henderson's Cafe, a cozy place with mismatched chairs and the smell of fresh scones always hanging in the air. Michael watched the other patrons with the gentle curiosity of someone who'd learned to appreciate life's small moments. An elderly couple sharing a slice of lemon cake, a young mother trying to keep her toddler entertained, and then 3 little girls who couldn't have been more than 7 years old, sitting at a table nearby with an older woman who appeared to be their grandmother. The girls were identical triplets, with the same dark curls, the same bright eyes, the same spray of freckles across their noses. They wore matching pink cardigans, though each had chosen her own dress underneath, a small assertion of individuality that made Michael smile. He noticed they kept glancing his way, whispering to each other, giggling behind their hands. Michael looked down at his tea, assuming they were simply being children, finding amusement in whatever children find amusing. But when he glanced up again, all 3 were staring directly at him with an intensity that made him slightly uncomfortable. Then the smallest one, the girl in the yellow dress, slid out of her chair and walked straight toward him. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her sisters appeared at her shoulders almost. Immediately, flanking her like tiny sentinels. "Hello there," Michael said, setting down his cup. "Can I help you girls with something?" The one in the yellow dress looked back at her sisters, then up at Michael with eyes that seemed far too serious for such a young face. "We need to ask you something important." "All right," Michael said, leaning forward slightly. "What is it?" The girl in the blue dress took over. "Our daddy is supposed to be here, but he's not coming. Mama said he's too busy again." The third girl, wearing green, added quickly, "And Grandma Rose is getting upset because Mama keeps crying in the bathroom." Michael's heart constricted. He glanced past the girls to their table, where indeed an older woman sat with her shoulders tight, periodically glancing toward the restroom with worried eyes. "I'm very sorry to hear that," Michael said gently, "but I'm not sure how I can help." The 3 girls looked at each other in that silent way siblings sometimes do, having an entire conversation without words. Then the smallest one spoke again. "Could you pretend to be our father? Just for a little while?" Michael blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Just for a little while," the girl in blue repeated. "So Grandma Rose doesn't worry so much, so Mama can stop crying. And so we can have a daddy here like we're supposed to," the one in green added, her voice cracking slightly. Michael sat back in his chair, completely at a loss. He looked at these 3 little faces, all watching him with such hope, such desperate, vulnerable hope, and felt something crack open in his chest. "Girls, I don't think that's a good idea," he said slowly. "Your mother and grandmother, they don't know me. They'll be confused, maybe even frightened." "Please," they said in unison, and the word hung in the air between them like a prayer. Michael thought about his own daughter, about the years after his wife had passed when Emily had needed him to be both parents, to fill an impossible void. He thought about the look she'd get in her eyes when her friends talked about their mothers, that particular kind of loneliness that no amount of love from one parent could entirely erase. He took a slow breath. "What are your names?" Their faces brightened instantly. "I'm Sophie," said the one in yellow. "That's Charlotte," she pointed to blue. "And that's Emma." "Well, Sophie, Charlotte, and Emma, my name is Michael, and I think we should talk to your grandmother and your mother together, honestly, rather than pretending. Would that be all right?" The girls looked disappointed but nodded. They seemed to understand, at some instinctive level, that honesty was a form of respect. Michael stood, leaving his tea behind, and walked with the 3 girls back to their table. Grandma Rose looked up, her eyes widening slightly with concern and confusion as this strange man approached with her granddaughters. "I'm so sorry to intrude," Michael said, his voice warm but respectful. "Your granddaughters just came to my table with an unusual request, and I thought it best to speak with you directly." Grandma Rose's weathered face showed both suspicion and curiosity. She had kind eyes, Michael noticed, though they were clouded with worry. "What kind of request?" Michael glanced at the girls, then back at Rose. "They asked if I would pretend to be their father for the afternoon. They said he was supposed to be here but isn't coming, and they were worried about you and their mother." Rose's expression crumpled for just a moment before she composed herself. "Oh, girls," she said softly. Then to Michael, "I'm terribly sorry. They shouldn't have bothered you." "They didn't bother me," Michael said, "but it did make me think that perhaps you all could use some company. I'm here alone, and I'd be happy to join you if you'd like. No pretending necessary, just someone to share the afternoon with." Rose studied his face for a long moment. Michael could see her weighing options, considering risks, trying to read his character in the lines around his eyes and the steadiness of his gaze. "That's very kind," she said finally, "but we couldn't impose. It wouldn't be an imposition, truly." The restroom door opened, and a woman in her early 30s emerged, her eyes red-rimmed despite obvious efforts to compose herself. She had the same dark curls as her daughters, though hers were pulled back in a loose bun. She wore a simple blue dress and carried herself with the particular exhaustion of someone barely holding it together. She stopped when she saw Michael standing at their table. "Mom?" she said, looking at Rose with confusion. "This is Michael," Rose said carefully. The girls went to his table and asked him to, well, he's offered to join us for the afternoon. The woman, whom Michael later learned was named Sarah, looked at him with a mixture of embarrassment and something else, something that might have been gratitude or might have been simply too much exhaustion to protest. "That's not necessary," Sarah said quietly. "We're fine." "Mama," Sophie said, tugging at her mother's sleeve, "he seems nice." Michael smiled. "I have a daughter about your age," he said to Sarah, though technically Emily was in her 20s now. "She's away at college. The house gets pretty quiet. I'd honestly enjoy the company, if you'd allow it." Sarah looked at her daughters, at her mother, at this stranger with gentle eyes who somehow felt safe in a way she couldn't quite explain. Finally, she nodded. Michael pulled up a chair from a nearby empty table. "So," he said, settling in, "what are we having? I've already had my tea, but I've heard the scones here are excellent." "We like the chocolate ones," Charlotte offered. "Well then, chocolate scones it is. My treat." "Oh no," Rose protested, but Michael was already signaling to the server. The conversation started slowly, carefully, like ice thawing on a winter pond. Michael asked the girls about school, and they told him. About their second-grade class and their teacher, Mrs. Patterson, who had a very fat cat named Mr. Whiskers. He laughed in all the right places, asked genuine questions, and listened with the kind of attention that made each girl feel like the most important person in the room. Sarah watched this stranger with her daughters and felt something unknot in her chest. Rose reached over and squeezed her hand. "So," Michael said after the scones arrived, "I take it someone was supposed to be here today?" Sarah's smile faded. "My ex-husband. It would have been our 10th anniversary. He promised the girls he'd come, take them to the park afterward. But he texted an hour ago." "Work emergency." "Another work emergency," Emma said quietly. Michael nodded slowly. "That must be very hard. For all of you. The girls don't understand why he's always too busy," Sarah said, her voice tight. "I've tried to explain, but explanations don't make it hurt less," Michael finished gently. Sarah looked at him with surprise. "Exactly. My wife passed away when my daughter was 10, Michael said. "Different situation, obviously, but I remember that look in her eyes when her friends would talk about their mothers. The missing never quite goes away, but you learn to carry it differently." The table was quiet for a moment. Even the girls seemed to sense the weight of shared understanding settling over them like a blanket. "I'm sorry for your loss," Rose said softly. "Thank you. It was 13 years ago now. You learn to keep going for the ones who need you." He smiled at the triplets. "These three are lucky to have you both. Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough," Sarah admitted, and Michael could hear the years of doubt compressed into those few words. "You're here," Michael said simply. "You showed up." That counts for more than you know. They talked for another hour. Michael told them about his work as a high school English teacher, about his love of old books and quiet. Sunday afternoons. Sarah shared that she worked as a nurse at the children's hospital, which explained the particular blend of strength and tenderness in her demeanor. Rose had been a seamstress for 40 years and still made all the girls matching cardigans. The girls warmed to Michael completely, showing him drawings in their backpacks, telling him about their different interests. Sophie loved horses. Charlotte was obsessed with dinosaurs. Emma wanted to be an astronaut. My daughter wanted to be an astronaut too at your age, Michael told Emma. Now she's studying engineering, still reaching for the stars, just in a different way. When the sun began to lower in the sky, painting the cafe in shades of amber and rose, Michael knew it was time to go. But something had shifted in this small group of people. What had begun as an awkward intrusion had become something else entirely, something gentle and necessary. "Thank you," Sarah said as they prepared to leave. "This is probably the strangest thing that's ever happened to me, but also somehow exactly what we needed." Michael smiled. "Sometimes the best things in life are the ones we never planned for." "Will we see you again?" Sophie asked, looking up at him with those serious eyes. Michael glanced at Sarah, seeking permission. She nodded, her own eyes bright with something that might have been hope. "I'm here most Sunday afternoons," he said. "Same table, same lukewarm Earl Grey. You're all welcome to join me any time." As they left the cafe, the triplets turned back to wave, and Michael waved back, feeling lighter than he had in months. He understood now that loneliness comes in many forms. Sometimes it's sitting alone at a cafe table. Sometimes it's sitting surrounded by family but missing a piece that should be there. And sometimes, in the most unexpected moments, lonely people find each other and become a little less lonely together. Michael returned to Henderson's the following Sunday, unsure if they would come. But at 3 o'clock, the bell above the door chimed, and 3 identical girls in matching cardigans rushed in, their mother and grandmother following behind with warm smiles. It became a ritual. Sunday afternoons at Henderson's. No pretending necessary, just kindness and presence and the quiet miracle of human connection. Sometimes, Michael thought, family isn't just what you're born into. Sometimes it's what you choose, what chooses you, in the gentle mathematics of grace and need and showing up. And sometimes all it takes is 3 brave little girls who understand something adults often forget, that asking for help is not weakness, but wisdom. That loneliness is not a thing to hide, but a bridge that, once crossed, connects us all.